We are talking connecting stuff. We are talking grip gear, but in a specific way today. In this show, we wanted to look at the reality that the old style big massive equipment is kind of being replaced in a lot of cases for a lot of use cases with smaller, more agile, just different kinds of gear. And there's a lot of need to understand how to work with the small stuff as well as the big stuff. I actually went out looking. I have a big old traditional Cardellini clamp out there that weighs about, I think, probably 2 pounds. It's a duckbill type of clamp, if you've ever seen those, and it's steel and it's heavy and it weighs more than my Blackmagic Pocket 6K camera rig all by itself. I couldn't find it out there, so I just grabbed one of the standard. This is a Manfrotto super clamp. It's pretty much the same thing as a traditional Mayfer clamp, but look at the size of that sucker. And then what I find on more of my rigs these days are things like these little duckbill clamps. Why? Because the cameras are getting smaller, because everything I rig doesn't need to be able to handle the huge torque of a giant C-stand setup. In fact, things are getting so incredibly small that the rig I shot with for Comic-Con, this was the whole thing. My iPhone went in that. It is an inexpensive but very flexible cage from Smallrig that fits my iPhone perfectly. Each time you do buy a new iPhone, you do have to kind of rev your Smallrig. I have on top of it what's called a Hawk Lock. That's another Smallrig device. And you can see this thing is very tiny, has a tiny lever on it, and you pop it in there and it's solid as a rock. So I was running and gunning and shooting all over the place, and all I had to carry was this little tiny rig that is so much easier than my years of having to kind of drag around this kind of class stuff. And it's still very useful, but the weight, the agility, the ability to get out and get shots quickly without losing any of the functionality of being able to pop one microphone or camera or light off of a rig, put it aside, and mount a new one that's better suited for the task at hand. You can do that in seconds because of all this new stuff. So as you get into these kind of new, smaller, lighter camera systems, you have to learn some new terminology and get into things. One of the things that I was surprised that I had to get into is I started wanting to do things like mount small teleprompters and things like that. You get into rigs like this that use these rods, and then they have all sorts of little fixtures that slide back and forth. So you can do something like mount a teleprompter on the rig, slide it back and forth, mount it at exactly the right distance from it. You can get things that'll hold a bigger lens and support it. So these rail systems are really, really useful. Then there's a ton of other things. Let's talk, the next kind of classification I wanted to look at really quickly was camera cages and rigs like this. This one is particularly designed just for my Blackmagic Studio 6K, and you can see it's got all sorts of both mounting holes all around it for the allowance of putting additional things in it. It also has stabilization things like this huge big hand grip here, and I specifically mounted 2 different kinds of handles. This is kind of a lighter weight fixed handle, but you can also move up and get a bigger handle like this. And the nice thing about this, you see a little thumb switch here, and I can pull it down and I can actually use it to tilt the camera angle really quickly and easily. So I find these kind of things really useful if you're going to go out and shoot in the field with something like a Blackmagic Cinema camera. It's also got bolt-ons for things like hard drives and other things, and they make so many specific things that these kind of systems really make things incredibly easy to deal with. I think everybody now who's working in these kind of new things finds their favorite systems, their favorite toys. I've mentioned Smallrig a couple of times, but there are many other manufacturers that make this kind of what I consider almost micro grip. In fact, I noticed that even in things like the knuckles that you normally see on C-stands, I'm starting to find a lot of them that are, you know, 2/3 or 1/3 the size of the original ones. They're still designed to do exactly the same thing. And because you have all of these, this will hold a standard grip arm, but it's just a smaller knuckle for a smaller weight camera when you don't need the size of the stuff that we used to shoot with all the time. I'm tired of having to do one baby plate spud that weighs as much as that entire tripod rig I just showed you. And a bag of these, not only does it rattle around, I mean, they will last forever. I mean, this thing, until the day that I sell it, there is nothing that's going to stop this 5/8 inch standard pin from functioning forever. It's just a huge hunk of metal. But I just want to keep getting lighter, more agile, but I don't want to give up any of the utility that is the magic of grip gear. And just psychologically and philosophically, the thing that I absolutely love about the grip industry is that there are so many clever people who have designed things to do specific tasks perfectly, reliably. They work every time. So when you get into these things like Alex mentioned NATO rail, this whole unit on the side of this uses that same NATO rail system. So if I just literally unclamp that, I can move that. If I push the button, this pops right off. That little NATO rail base there works with everything designed for NATO rail. So if I don't want this handle, if I want a microphone holder or something like that, I can literally just swap one out for another really quickly. And time is money on a set. You don't want clients and casts and things like that. So spending a little more money to do something other than I'm just going to, rig it together, tighten up all the little hex head screws on it, and then when I get out in the field, I have to use it that way without changing it. I love the fact that these really smart people and these smart companies that are designing for their wares for the modern era make it as easy to use as the traditional grip gear. Okay, I've been talking a lot about this. I thought there were some other people here who might have suggestions, or we might just dive into the questions. Anybody else on the panel wanted to talk about grip stuff in general and microscopic grip or bigger grip? No? All right, then we're going to dive into questions. Oh, Josh just raised his hand. Josh, dive in.
Sure. Well, like you were saying, Bill, the having something smaller, that can do a few things. I've found that the Falcon system is just a little bit smaller than the Arca Swiss. Sorry, I'm going to have focus challenges today. And I've used it on the bottom of some of my other rigs. Pull back to show some of the major rigs. So this particular rig can go to drop on a regular Arca Swiss for the base mount. The camera itself has the little Falcams. They're a little smaller. They can click in and click out a little bit. Gives you a little bit more modularity. Another thing that I wanted to show is, switch to camera B there, is you can use some of the mounts for camera mounts on some of these sort of telescoping camera rigs and mounts. That gives you sort of where your positionings are for a regular Mayfer or regular Mayfer or super clamp as well. But using some of the combination of the small rig grips, you can use in combination with a couple other things to make things a little bit smaller. One thing's about holding something on a vertical axis on the super grip. Doesn't have a whole lot of weight that you can put in a vertical axis. But if you pull off some of the you put some of the small rig cams in a vertical line, you can attach to vertical poles. The camera that I had there was on sort of a different rig. Don't have that set up right now, but maybe I'll get that set up and show you.
Fair enough. We got a couple other people who want to get into this. So Kyle, what kinds of things have you found useful in this small grip category?
Well, I was just going to, I'm having some frame rate issues myself, but was going to clarify micro grip is not the Matthews branded micro grip thing that we're talking about. And I would offer to the group, we should come up with a new term for what is this micro small, it's not micro small, different category of putting stuff together. Like it's very DIY. Anyway, but I'm all about it. I'm all about it, and I have one of the cheap newer versions, I believe, but it's similar to the Manfrotto arm, but it comes in very handy just to like clip things on. But it's kind of just a very piece things together situation, and so I've got several bits and bobbles. But Chris, go ahead.
Yeah, I think this is the same thing. This is the rig I used for my older camera. I have one of the mini clamps on it. That is, I believe, the newer little friction arm in between. And again, what we're looking to do is just not have to use older style, bigger, more robust mounting equipment when it's not necessary, because the things we are mounting are so much smaller. I mean, this I would not put a Blackmagic 6K probably on, although it might hold it up just fine. But for an iPhone rig, no problem. Chris Fenwick, you wanted to dive in? Oops.
Yeah, triple clicking. Yeah, it's funny, Bill. I have all the same crap sitting right here on my desk. Old stuff. It's literally, I didn't prepare for this. I was just like, oh, I have all that stuff sitting back here. This is it's Legos for adults is what it is.
Absolutely.
With power cords. So this is a little guy I was using in the truck on the Eclipse shoot. I have a little presentation here I want to show you. So back in the Eclipse, I drove out to Texas from California. So it was a few days on the road by myself, and I camped at this place in the middle of nowhere, no cell, nothing. But for the trip, I wanted to be in contact with everybody. So I went a little overboard, maybe, but I affectionately refer to it as Truck Mac. And you could see I have a 15-inch 4K display there. There's JJ and Talaluk and Mickey's chair. But on the dash there, you see I mounted the same camera actually that I'm using right here. It's this camera. It's It's the Instalink 360. Now, what was fun, and the reason why I wanted to put it, attach it to a Mac on the road, and here's the thing about it's a self-leveling gimbal. I didn't realize that. Actually, Jonas pointed it out to me when I was on an off-road portion of the drive. He's like, hey, your camera's keeping level. I was like, I did not realize it would do that. But what was nice about having it attached to the Mac in the truck on the road, nerd, is I had my Stream Deck, and I could hit a button because the Instalink can be controlled. You can assign a preset in the Instalink to a Stream Deck button. So I had one button for out the front. Hey, look at this beautiful place I'm driving. One button for spin around, shoot the dude driving. And don't tell my wife, I was on Zoom the whole time. And so here's, again, here's the guys. And then, so this is a better shot of the Instalink. Now, in regards to the grip stuff, this little gizmo right here, actually, I can go like this. This is a cool device, although I got to say the updated version of them is not as good. It's a Ulanzi thing, and it does GoPro-y type stuff. But it has I don't have one to show you here. Do I? No, I don't. It magnetically goes boop, and it like auto aligns itself, and then you turn it a quarter turn, and it's locked in.
Oh, that's
and
cool.
It's so robust that and works so well. I've actually done this little mount here. This little mount here mounts to the headrest back over here over my shoulder on the other seat. And I could put one of the Ulanzi mounts right here. And I've actually done it. I actually published a video where I'm driving down the road. I reach over and I go clink, clink, pull it off, hand it over. I have another one of those mounts right outside the window on the rearview mirror, which you might be able to see in that video. And the the motion of moving it was smooth enough that I left it in the final edit. Like that's how well this little magnetic mount thing works. And then, of course, to connect to the world, I had a Starlink up on the roof, which worked pretty good. And this is me on the way home. This is actually the same lake bed where we did the rocket launch, Bill.
Oh, yeah. Jean Lake outside of Las Vegas.
Yep. So anyway, absolutely took advantage. There was multiple places around the truck where I had the Instalink and the what's the other one called, the other PTZ toy one, ObSpot. I had one of those in the truck, and I didn't take any traditional video gear at all. None.
Yeah. It's just, you get the feeling that things are changing. It's not that this gear can do everything that the big 1-ton grip truck could do for you in terms of mounting different kinds of things, particularly bigger things. But it's so nice to be able to find things. And most of these pieces are reasonably inexpensive. And they just don't have to be as big. They don't have to be as well machined and well engineered because we're not holding those big loads. As a matter of fact, interestingly enough, I used to use tons of these. This is a Bogan or Manfrotto thing. And the purpose of it is that a device or a spud or anything else you want, standard quarter 20 on there, really easy with a big knob to get off. But then it has holes in it that hold the traditional, what have I got? Oh, I can just cut to that shot. These kind of traditional spuds, I've got that mounted to one of the small clamps as well, but the brass fitting on the end, that fitting goes into these kind of holes. And you can see I have two of them here. So you've got two different lock points. And so most of the time when I have to throw a camera somewhere weird, the easiest thing to do is just mount this into the quarter 20 on the bottom of the camera. And then whatever I have, whether it's a grip arm or a spud like that, or wherever I can mount it with that small clamp like I have here, I have an instant way to mount things, and it's just a bunch of those in a bag is a way different and easier thing to travel and move around than a bunch of standard grip equipment. You know, stuff like this. This weighs more by itself. This is an old 90 degree, or actually you can unlock it and make it any degree you want. This thing weighs probably 4-ton monopod. I don't remember where I put it right now, but I find myself often even using these little snap connectors because the iPhone is so light that I don't really need anything more than this. This is a little 360-degree swivel connector. So for a small device, you can get away with so much easier and faster. And boy, popping the phone in and out of this is a half a second. So if I need to do a handheld shot over there and I don't want my phone even in a cage, I want it completely free, I shot for hours at Comic-Con with just that little snap rig. So it's getting cool out there. A lot of possibilities, and when you're not doing big stuff, you just have a lot more flexibility. Let's dive into our questions. We got a lot of them.
Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas is asking, discuss this low budget but innovative do-it-yourself build without a camera cage and if it would work for a Sony ZV-E10 Mark II.
Yeah, I think almost all of these cameras that are popular nowadays, somebody is building some kind of either cage, but if you don't want the cage, some sort of thing. Most of them have that quarter 20 on the bottom. And for me, the only question is, am I going to use something incredibly lightweight like these little mounts, or I have bigger mounts? I have 2 or 3 sizes of ball heads and mounts so that if I determine that, in this circumstance, that particular DSLR is a little too heavy for this, I need to step up to the next thing. And I don't think I have that box with me. Now I'm not seeing it here. But I could easily step up to something that's more robust to hold that weight camera without a problem. Courtney, you had a thought?
Well, one of the things he talks about in there is this Viltrox monitor, which is, I have one here, which is very handy for use with DSLRs. It has a built-in shade on it. It comes with this mount that is a double, that's a pan tilt mount with a female and a male, 1/4 inch on the bottom. and it comes with battery power for it, and it's very handy because it has built-in all kind of audio monitoring and all kinds of scopes built into that monitor, and it's 1200 nits, so it works great for outdoors. So that was one thing I got from the video, and the Viltrox is fairly cheap to buy, so take a look for these Viltrox 5-inch HDMI monitor.
Yeah, and whenever I mount a monitor, I always reach for one of these kind of arms. I would probably switch out the littlest clamp for something mid-sized to give me a little more grip, because a monitor is probably going to be more expensive than, for example, an inexpensive light. But these kind of friction arms that let you not only figure out the angle that you want it at, but all of these heads will change from 60 to 90 degrees. They're very useful if you're mounting something like a monitor where you want to be able to clip it on. Yeah, Courtney's got one in his hand there. And just get the monitor exactly where you want it so that your client or your customer or you, hidden behind the rig, can see it exactly as you need to. Kyle, you had some thoughts?
Well, I was just going to say, Paul hit on it. It's the innovative, like the whole point of all of these small and more non-traditional mini kind of things is that they're like pushing the limits of like what you can do quicker, faster, for client purposes and or for your own purposes. So would it work with a Sony EV? That's the only question I have is, does the Sony have a quarter 20 mount on the top? Because it looks like what they basically did was just made the handle the cage that you screw everything into. And so basically it depends on what you want it to do and how fast you want it to go. And so all of which to say, the only reason to not use the traditional setups is to try something new or different or do it faster, because all of the traditional stuff works. It's been work. They've honed it in for years and years to do it the way they wanted to do it, right? But like the whole point of this is pushing the limits of what is quote unquote normal, and like you gotta put a camera in a car while you're driving across the trails. Like it's not your normal setup, So like, I guess it just depends on what are you trying to do. Like that's always what I come down to is what are you trying to achieve?
Yeah, then the other thing that you need, I think, and most of us probably have, I'm going to go back to that shot. The little, you're seeing there's a quarter 20 going into here, but I've adapted it with a quarter 20 to microphone holder there because I needed the 3/8/16, which is on one end on the out, and I needed a quarter 20 there. So I probably have 3 or 4 different connection levels right in that little area of that thing. And all of us probably have those, a little box of little adapters. And I got to get from this thread and size to the next thread and size so I can put something on it and attach it to that. And if you gather these things together, you just, okay, I got to fix this. I'm going to do it. You turn away, you go into your parts kit, and you build something bespoke to do that with. Josh, you wanted to get in on this? Oh, go ahead, Kyle. Do you have a follow-up?
Well, I was just going to say, you mentioned this size and this thread. Like that's the other thing is like we're still working within traditional like threads and size. Like you can't just suddenly start using millimeters or different things that just don't work together. So you still want to use the foundation of traditional stuff, but then you get to, like Chris said, it's Legos for electronics. Yeah,
and actually to that point, I have found that if you go to a larger hardware store, particularly the Aces are good for this, and you ask them, what do you have in quarter 20 thread count, you will find a variety of different connectors that adhere to that standard. Same thing with the 3/8/16, which is kind of the next step up that most of these have. In fact, a lot of, and I don't think I have one here unless I pull this off. Let me see if I can unscrew it real quick. Yeah, I can. So this is a typical brass little fitting. Let me just put it down here and cut to it and see if I'm anywhere close. Yeah. So that'll have a quarter 20 on one end and a 3/8/16 on the other. And you can get that in both male and female. So either the threaded little protrusions on one side or the holes that take the same thing. And once you have a variety of both of those, you find you're using those a lot to adapt one standard to the other. Josh, you wanted to get in on this?
Yeah, kind of like what you were saying, Kyle, about adapting something that it's already out there and just making a slight adaptation to it. This was kind of what I was talking about with the with the small rig clamps. They're kind of handy and they're smaller than the major rigs. But if you take some of your camera adapters that are made to connect, this is kind of like where you add like a flash, or they have the 1/4-20 flashes. You can put a couple of them together. The 1/4-20s go right into the 1/4-20 sockets. Nice thing about that is you have something that has a lot of vertical force. That's not for the ZV-10 per se, but for your support equipment or for your lighting or any type of vertical source. This holds really well. It gives you one attachment point, of course, for the ends. And these come in different sizes. If you want a bigger one, they have larger extensions. It also frees up the 2 3/8 adapters to the sides that you can have to pull those. So that gives you a nice sort of mounting bracket. Same thing, Bill, with that spud that you have. That's what I was using for the turning piece.
Yeah, absolutely. You find you buy something and, you're, okay, another $15, another $20, another, $9.95. You do that over and over and over again, never throw anything away, and you end up with these boxes of parts. And when you go to build some Tinker Toy thing, as Chris, I think, perfectly managed. I mean, this is Tinker Toys for grown-ups, and all that training of building Legos and stuff like that now suddenly turns out to be a valuable skill. Courtney, your thoughts?
Yeah, and you can never have enough cheese plates. And I'm not talking charcuterie here. We're talking about these. And make sure you get one. There's some with just the threaded holes, like 3/8, 16, and 1/4-20, like these. But make sure you get some with some beveled through holes for 3/8, so that you can put a flathead 3/8 in there to bolt it to something, or you can bolt this on the bottom of your camera. They also make adapters that you can bolt them to that go on your lens support rods like that. So you can bolt anything you want, any of those monitor clamps and magic arms that we showed earlier onto those cheese plates. They're about $30 to $40. You can get them even cheaper if you get the Japanese kind. But make sure they have the through holes on them, because there are some out there that are just threaded 1/4-20s and 3/8 16s. But you can never have enough charcuterie on hand.
Absolutely. And you will find, I don't know if I got the shot framed right, but on that rail system I was showing you, look on the bottom and what are you going to see? More 1/4-20s, more 3/8 16s, almost all the stuff that you buy from the various manufacturers adhere to one of those standards, and you will find that the arm that you suddenly need to hang something on it, oh gosh, look, they put a couple of those on the side too. Maybe not as many as they have put on that original rig I showed you. I don't even know where I put it now. That Blackmagic cage, I think it must have had 25 different little 1/4-20 mounting points on it all the way around. And that's to let you decide, I should attach the light more toward the center, or no, I actually need it over on the side more. So you take it out of one 1/4-20. So this kind of cheese plate idea that Courtney is showing you is designed to allow you to decide where you want to distribute those attachment points and make sure that you can get all the equipment onto it that you need to. Next question.
Samuel Nordvik in Norway is asking, do you have a suggestion for an iPad mini mount directly under the camera lens? Looking to build a small, unobtrusive rig for running gun and light travel.
Courtney, dive in.
We use a lot of these for teleprompter mounts instead of a beam splitter. Especially on a Steadicam where you don't want to, you're on a super wide angle lens, so you may not be able to put a small beam splitter in front of a wide angle lens. We'll put a small monitor about the size of your iPad mini directly under the lens or over the lens on a magic arm. And there's lots of these holders out there that are designed to hold the iPad mini that are spring-loaded, like the one Bill showed earlier. And then they've got down here at the bottom, they've got a 1/4-20 that you can then bolt it to your basic magic arm. And the trick with the magic arm to position this under the lens is get a shorter one as will position it under the lens as you can, because of course, the longer the arm, the more torque there is, and the more you're going to have to crank down on those bolts to hold it. Something like this that has dual ball adjusters going onto a cheese plate or onto the top mount, you can get a variety of mounts that go on the hot shoe on the top, and adapt this quarter 20 to a hot shoe that goes on the top, and then you can have it just above the lens going into that quarter 20 on the bottom of your iPad mount. And this one handle then tightens down both of those balls at the same time. So you just get it where you want it, tighten down that handle, and Bob's your uncle. And then he's reading off the teleprompter, seeing the monitor.
We need Bob back on set. Kyle Hammond.
Sorry, I had to unmute. As a case in point, I thought I would show, this came with my flash, so a photography flash. It's just a little tripod stand kind of thing, but I've got it clipped to a mount, and this is my 7-inch best view monitor that normally is hooked up right over there under my camera. So it's about the same size as a iPad mini. But the thing also to note is I also have a right angle HDMI setup, which is also another important thing to have in these kinds of setup, is like, because sometimes the plug does not end up where you want it to be, so you always want to have a little adapter of sorts to like send it a different direction. That's all I was going to say.
Oh, is that ever true? I ran into that just last week, but I don't have a picture of it up. Now, Josh Kaufman, you want to get back in on this?
There's my mute. Yeah, the same kind of thing that I'm using for my camera rig right here, as you can see. You just flip this around. This is holding my monitor, but you can simply flip it around for the other side. Basically, what you have is it can hold a phone, or it can hold a larger tablet, or definitely a Mac Mini to pull the end. And I can definitely vouch for those little grips that Courtney was showing off. These things are fantastic. They're kind of in the mid-range of like your friction grips are kind of terrible. Everyone kind of knows that. And then you have the iFootage stuff, and they're fantastic, but a little pricey. And this is sort of like a mid-range in between. You've got these grips that can be had for a little bit. You can get little different extensions and different ball adapters and make things work. And I find this is a good compromise.
Yeah, one of the things I noticed is back in the old days when equipment was heavy and your Sony field monitor, even your 5-inch monitor, was a huge, long thing that weighed 10, 12, 20 pounds. You really needed monstrous, robust, safe grip equipment. You wanted C-stands and grip arms that literally, if you use them correctly, there was no chance they would slip or fall or things like that. Now that we're running with rigs like the size of a phone and a little phone mount, the danger is nowhere near that. And it took me a while to realize that things that were made of plastic, this being a good example of it. I mean, this whole thing weighs a half an ounce, and it's not bad, but this is not going to survive me driving over it in the field if it falls down and I back the car over that. It's going to go away and I'm going to have to buy another one. And I used to buy all my grip gear with the opposite in mind. I want to be able to drive over this thing accidentally and still have it perfectly function the next day, because I might be on a road trip going 5 or 6 places. Now, if I had something like this, and the top part of this, without the little clamp on it, probably took somebody $1 or $2 to make and market, and they may have sold it for $6.95, $7.95 or whatever. But I'm probably going to buy 2 or 3 of these at the same time if it's a right time to do that, and have a backup and a tertiary backup in my kit if it's mission critical and I know I'm going to need to use my phone on the end of that monopod. And if this one gets busted because it falls over and hits just wrong and the springs fly out of it, I want another one waiting. But that kind of replaceable, consumable mount as opposed to a mount that's going to last my career is something I think about a lot these days. Kyle Hammond?
I just wanted to circle back on the note of my mount for my monitor. I realized that iPad does not have quarter 20 connection to it, and so what I would do, or what I have, is Ulanzi. You mentioned Ulanzi, Chris. They have a iPad mount that has quarter 20 on either end. So basically, you put your Ulanzi mount, and I'm going to put it in the chat. You put that in between your mount for your camera and then put the camera on top. So like you basically slide it into the path of mounting it. Anyway.
Yeah, and if I'm looking for stable, one of the things I will do a search on is mobile iPad mount, and you will find things like the RAM line. RAM makes a lot of them for law enforcement and things like that. I mean, these tablets are used now so much, and including in mission-critical environments like inside a police car or a public safety vehicle or something like that, that there are very robust mounting situations should you need something that will lock down, not go anywhere. In fact, a lot of them even have safety cables so that that piece of gear can't be taken out of a public service vehicle. So you'll find everything from the top end like that they're really made solid and will not break, down to the quick use stuff that's kind of more replaceable, like I said. Next question.
Håkan Fors from Stockholm, Sweden is asking, just got my hands on a Proaim Sky-Walker Pro. Excited to use it in live sports broadcasts. Any recommendations or cool ideas how to utilize it?
Courtney, did you find time to take a look at this?
Yeah, it's a cable cam, but it's more of a trolley cam. So it just runs along a suspended cable between 2 points across above a field, so you can go back and forth. You could run it the length of the field, probably would be your best setup in covering sports, so you could go up or down field to give you a position along the sidelines. You probably couldn't run it above the play area, depending upon what type of football you're playing there, American or soccer, as we call it, because you don't want to interfere with any of the balls, passes, or kicks. And with just 2 wires, you can't really pull it up to get it out of the way, but you can traverse a long cable. So it's good for those situations like swim meets where you have to go along the side of the pool following people that are going alongside. And let's say you can't mount anything at poolside because there's some restriction for viewing or something. You could find some poles or light poles that are either in and string some steel cable between them and use that as a cable cam to run your camera up and down along the sidelines, and that might give you some shots. So it's interesting for only $2,000, which is amazingly cheap for a spider cam like this. It doesn't include any type of hothead or anything on it. It's just the transport, and then you have to mount your own wireless gimbal or something hanging down below it that's going to carry your camera. But for around $2,000, I don't know if that includes. It holds 22 pounds, 10 kilograms. So a medium to a light camera can be mounted on it. And we've got to make sure that you take into account, you got to have batteries on it as well. So
yeah, and that's a case where I'd probably use YouTube as its search engine capabilities. I'd punch in trolley cam or cable cam and see what comes up and follow the breadcrumbs. I bet you'd find a couple of great circumstances where people are using those kind of things. I saw something on YouTube the other day. It was a reenactment, whole line of soldiers in the background, a young lady in white flowing stuff with a sword in her hands. And at some point, they were showing you the whole rig, including the wires that would let her leap off the horse to stand in the saddle, continually wielding the sword. And you can see for a high dollar production, that cable cam above her rigged to all that stuff allowed them to get a stunning shot that otherwise you would say, how the heck did they do that? How did she manage to leap out of the saddle to standing on the saddle, all while rallying the troops in the background? Lovely shot. Let's go to the next question.
Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas is asking, websites like No Film School, Cinema 5D, and Film Riot provide articles, tutorials, and reviews on non-traditional camera rigs and filmmaking techniques. Discuss these and other sources of information on non-traditional camera rigs.
Kyle, have you looked at a bunch of these?
I've looked at so many of those, and that's why I was going to also throw DSLR video shooter into the mix. Like, there's just a slew of information on YouTube of people trying new things, and that's what I would say is basically the gist of it is get out there and try something. Like, that's the whole point of a lot of these YouTube videos and websites are, here's what I tried, what do you think? And so it's just jumping in there and trying something new, seeing what works, because you can try it on paper and look at it on a website and be like, yeah, that looks like it works. But then once you have it in your hands and plug it in and put it together, that's when you start to, like I said, you realize, oh, well, this output doesn't line up with that input, and so I need a thing to make this work with that. And so it's just about cobbling it all together.
Courtney Gooden?
Well, I could take a moment, kind of a preview of things to come tomorrow, maybe, and describe a camera rig that we had to build on Roar, which was completely unconventional. And we were shooting 35 millimeter Panavision. So that means we had to put an Airflex. We had to do a scene. There's a scene where two of the characters, Melanie and John, go up onto the roof of a third-story roof of a house, and they find some barrels, and lions are chasing them. So they jump into the barrels. And one is filled with water and one's not. So we spent 3 weeks on this scene, okay, shooting just this scene. And so they're getting in the barrel. And so we had to figure out ways to get shots of the lions, the POV of the people in the barrel looking out from a film camera and seeing the lion come over the edge of the barrel and being very menacing and sounding very menacing. I had to get the sound from inside the barrel. So we had these Arri 2Cs, which is a camera that looks like this, which is a fairly small. You put a 200, this is a 200-foot mag on the back of it. Then it's fairly small. And these were oak barrels, the kind for storing. One person could fit inside. So we had a flat base like this here, which turns the Arri around. Normally the Arri has the motor that sticks out the bottom. It's designed for handheld. We had a flat base like this one over here that moves the motor horizontally or vertically. And we put that, we had our welders create a right angle mount so that they could mount it looking up from the bottom of the barrel out the top. And it was bolted to the bottom of the barrel. Well, it gets worse. So we got and then we had a little cage off to the side where we put a live chicken. And it's to get the lions interested in looking over the edge and drooling and roaring into. And I had a microphone down there, Shep's microphone in there, and get this incredible stereo sound of them. Oh, it sounded awful. When they started roaring into that barrel, you can imagine what it sounded like. But the scene ends. This is what was really crazy. The scene ends with a lion tumping over the barrel with Melanie in it, and it rolls. It rolls to the edge of the roof, through a railing, off the roof, down 3 stories, and lands in the water where there's a giant bull elephant who then comes after the POV inside. And so we had to shoot this all in one shot. And so
oh my gosh,
that POV from falling over, rolling to the edge, falling down 3 stories, landing in the water, the elephant standing in about 5 feet of water, and a shot of the elephant reaching into the barrel at the bottom. And that rig with a 30 millimeter lens on it was about a $30,000 lens, maybe a 20 millimeter lens. It's anamorphic lens, from Panavision. And we had an Arri technician on hand because we had cables on the barrel and rolled up the cables and measured the cables so that the barrel would unroll. And so you'd see this image going round and round and round as it's falling. And then it hits the water. And then we had the cables just the right length so the barrel could hit the water but not submerge because there was no room for a water box or anything to contain the camera to waterproof it. So it's landing in the water in the barrel. So they measured the cables precisely, and so it would roll and unspool the cables as it spun down and unspool kind of like a yo-yo down the side of the house. And on the bottom, there was a guy that would grab the back of the barrel when it hit the water and aim it at the elephant. The elephant was trained that there's food. They trained the elephant for weeks to get food out of the barrel. And inside there's that area run like that. And one time the cable broke and it landed in the water. We had a technician from Aeroflex there, from factory trained technician, who would have to disassemble after every take. He would have to pull the camera out. They'd have to disassemble it. We'd have to replace the 30 millimeter lens with another one and send that one back to Panavision to be cleaned and dried out because it got in the water. And it would take us about 6 hours between takes to set it up each day. And we shot it for 3 days to get that one take of that one camera mount. So that's a crazy camera mount. It had to, it had to withstand rolling over and over again, crashing into the water, and being attacked by an elephant at the end. So
sounds like you should have brought in Rube Goldberg as an advisor. Nice story, though. Thank you. Next question.
From Håkan Forsen, Stockholm, Sweden. Any suggestion of a lightweight way to temporarily mount a PTZ to a 1.5-inch pole? Is a Manfrotto Magic Arm the best option?
Can certainly work. There are pole mounts and things like that. I've also taken standard ring clamps from automotive stores, literally put a washer and a 1/4-20 out from it, and you can literally use a hose clamp on a variable size pole, and it'll give you enough stability with that 1/4-20 mounted to one of those little arms or something like that. So there's a lot of ways to do it. There are circular mounts. There are heads, and in fact, I think you probably noticed that if I grab one of these standard clamps, this probably wouldn't work on a big diameter hole, but often the jaws of holes, and in fact, I should just grab the Manfrotto clamp. I don't think I have the inset, but you can see that one side of this actually has a notch in it, and that's designed for going around hole poles and things like that. I don't know why I don't have it here, but usually there's clipped to the back of this little screw a thing that you can insert into that to make it a flat-to-flat clamp if you are using it with wood stock boards and things like that, shelves to mount. So, yeah, those things are pretty typical part of the grip gear kit stuff. Hope that helped, Håkan. Let's move to the next question.
Next question is from Roscoe Jones in Madison, Indiana. Do you have a resource for underwater or weatherproof camera kits? What have you used when suddenly caught in a storm to protect your camera?
Well, the big camera manufacturers often have waterproof housings manufactured that work with their cameras. Most of my DSLR in the early days, I would look for their underwater mount. That they can be very pricey, but the advantage of them is that you can usually operate the camera inside. It often has either little articulating arms to push buttons or to change things. Those are the big ones. I've also gotten down to the point where I've literally put cameras in Ziploc bags and done lightweight work with a small camera. But Chris, what do you think?
I know Roscoe isn't asking about this specifically, but I will tell you this because it came up in a conversation with a friend the other day. If you are trying to shoot fun underwater stuff with like a GoPro, get one of these things. If you haven't seen one of these in use, it's fantastic. It allows, the primary thing it allows you to do is to get that shot where everything above the water looks normal, GoPro, and then everything below the water, and you get the water line across the thing. And you can only do that with this dome look. You can also take it down below. It's got a big bubble of air, of course, so you're not going to go super deep real easy. But they're a lot of fun. And I realize, Roscoe, that's not exactly what you're talking about, but it was my turn to talk, so I had to say something.
Courtney.
Yeah, there's also things, and we're not talking about underwater shooting. That's underwater housing. That's something different. But for inclement weather, they make raincoats. You can get these for at B&H, designed to go over a DSLR and coat a long lens here for shooting in heavy downpour rains. You want to keep the rain off the camera and off the lens. So there's thing. Porta-Brace also makes some that in the days of camcorders would go over the camcorder, and they'd be made out of clear vinyl. You had to make sure that the seams didn't leak, because that was a bad place. The seams would always leak after you use them for a while. And they have a zipper, a waterproof zipper that zips them in. And you got to watch about overheating too. You don't want to use them on a hot day, but if it's raining, it's probably stormy, so you probably don't have to worry about too much, because it covers up the ventilation on your camera, so you got to be careful about that. But there are rain covers that are custom made for individual cameras. Porta-Brace makes them, and a number of other companies make raincoats.
And I like Chris Henwick's solution much better, but we used to shoot a lot for PetSmart, and so we used to run over and grab one of the single one-piece molded acrylic aquariums and just put the camera in that and lower it below the water. If you're not going below 12 inches, and you're absolutely sure you're not going below 12 inches, that works great too. Next question.
Håkan Fors in Stockholm, Sweden is asking, or rather looks like he wants to show us his rig. Our 2-in-1 camera rig for both wide and tight shot with one camera operator. Smallrig VersaFrame Camera Cage is base and 3D printed NDI encoder holder.
That sounds really exciting. And oh, you've got a link there to it. So anybody who wants to see this, go into the chat or the show links in the Discord afterwards. There it is. Somebody got a hold of it and pulled it out. Very nice. One of the reasons I like being on set so much is the people, particularly the camera operators, this is how everyone thinks. You know, it's like, I got to get this weird shot, and it's weird. How can I fix this? And they all, they either by themselves or with their team put their heads together and say, well, let's try this way and let's try that way. And the next thing you know, if you have enough of these adapters and gizmos and connectors and arms and everything else, you just build stuff to make it work. It's, to me, one of the most fun parts of shooting. Next question.
Rob Collins in Kansas City, Missouri is asking, what handheld rig or a gimbal would the panel recommend to get the handshake out of a phone that is on the move?
You know, I think they're getting more and better ones. They're less expensive as time goes on. I'm pretty fond of my DJI little handheld. Oh gosh, I'm trying to remember the name of it.
The Osmo.
Osmo, thank you. I have an Osmo 4. I haven't really felt the need to improve it. They have a lovely little magnetic mount that once you put it on your phone and you figure out the balance point, you put a little mark on the back of your phone case or something like that. Next time you do, it just snaps on. Then magnetically it mounts. You push the button. It figures everything out, goes through a few little test things. And the next thing you know, you have a very steady camera thing. And I didn't realize how steady until I was holding that and I was in the back of Chris Fenwick's pickup truck on our shoot for the rocket launch for John Pretto. And I was standing in the back holding on to the roll cage bar with that out the side in my hand. I was bouncing around like crazy. I go back and I look at the shot and it's like locked. I was so stunned at how well those little things work. Alexander Knight, dive in.
Yeah, I'll back your comment about the DJI. I mean, I find modern smartphones have very good stabilization. And, they keep getting better all the time. If you need extra stabilization, you could get a gimbal like the DJI. I have an iPhone 15 Pro Max, and I find that when I put it into the cinematic video setting, it is so butter smooth when I move it, and I try. Like it's incredible. So I don't know what phone you have, but if you've got the latest iPhone, cinematic mode, try it out if you haven't.
Absolutely, Kyle Hammond.
I was going to echo what Alexander said. Just making sure your phone settings are doing the best they can to get rid of the handshake, because no gimbal or rig or anything is going to take the footsteps out of your shot if you're moving around. But if you're just trying to get rid of handshake, stabilization within the cameras, and also make sure or check out the Blackmagic camera app. Also has its own stabilization within it. So just go internal before you go external is my suggestion. And last thing. The other part is in theater, you start to learn how to walk flat. And so, like, if you must try, there's a way to use your core and make sure that your belly basically is at the same plane as you walk. And so that is the best way to get rid of.
To call that grouchoing.
Yeah, keeping your midsection all at one path, and then your feet move, but not your rest of your body.
Absolutely. John Kaufman. I'm sorry, Josh Kaufman.
And, while the modern stabilization does good, sometimes it can be a little finicky whenever you're panning or putting it. It doesn't quite know whenever you want to pan or the other pans. So sometimes I'll just take it off, and I think I'll just one up for the DJI, and this is a Model 3. So the latest models, basically, they just get lighter and get different attachment points. The software that you can use with it can do certain different panning motions and some canned shots and do some some panoramas and and time lapse things as well. Handheld's hard to beat that for regular intention, and plus it has the 1/4-20 mounts where you can put it on to a certain grip, extend your grip, or put it on another thing, and you even use that for some of its own tracking. You can have it even track a subject and move it around. So even the old ones, they're between $70, $50, $60, $70. Can't beat it.
Let's go to the next question.
Next question is from Danny Grizzle, Longview, Texas. Special category, rigging plant mics in autos. I'm looking at URSA wire rig, visor mount for COS 11, and something to attach a Sennheiser MKH to the console. Recommendations?
Yeah, it depends. Well, Courtney's going to start us off. Courtney?
Well, the things we've been showing all evening, all morning here, which is a clamp that you can clamp underneath the steering wheel or underneath the dashboard with a magic arm on it, and a 1/4 to 3/8 adapter on it to go into a mic shock mount. That's how I always mount it underneath, like a 416 or a Sheps, just out of camera frame, below the frame, underneath on an arm. With a shock mount on the microphone, like a little spider shock mount on the Sheps, or the Rycote shock mount on the 416s. Overhead on the COS 11s, we used to hide them in the visor, using either a vampire clip or just a piece of tape to hide it under the backside of the visor, so that just the head of the microphone is sticking out a little bit. Then run the wire over and then down the side post of the car to a transmitter that's, or sometimes we would put the transmitter up high too in the car because it would get better connectivity. But if we have it wired into a recorder, we'd run the wire down into an XLR adapter on the floorboards and to a recorder in the back seat. That's how we used to run them. And if we didn't go into a transmitter of some sort, the COS 11, that's how we mount the MKH, the 416s and the MKH 60s and 50s. In there, and a 50 mounted between, it's harder in modern cars. In older cars, it was easier because there's more stuff to clamp onto that wasn't just plastic. And these days in cars, everything's smooth. You can also get these vacuum suction cups that will attach to, of course, glass. Or if you have a smooth surface of plastic in your car somewhere. I wouldn't suggest putting it on a display in a Tesla, but if you've got a smooth portion of the dashboard with that fake burl wood or something, you can put these little pump-up vacuum suction cups on that have a 1/4-20 post coming out of them. Then you can mount a magic arm to that. And those come in real handy for mounting inside cars, to windshields, etc. GoPro makes a lot of mounts too. You might look there for mounts that you can cannibalize those GoPro mounts and use them for mic mounts as well.
Yeah, the only thing about the GoPro mounts is that little 3-to-2 holder on them drives me crazy because I never have the right other side of that to get to what I want. So if you have a lot of it, it's fine, but that makes me crazy. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael's asking, could a low-end professional camera like the PXW Z200 be rigged in this fashion?
Yeah, you can rig most anything, but the thing is, as the cameras get heavier, you do want to move up in class because you can outweight your rig, particularly if you're doing anything with motion involved. I have seen these little small things break, particularly the ones like this where you just have a small 1/4-20, a little plastic friction thing there, which I'll mention in the next thing. A large camera under a lot of tests, I have seen these fail. So you want to next level up if you can. Let's get to the next question.
Danny Grizzle in Longview, Texas is asking the eternal rigging question, Loctite Blue or red?
Loctite. Whether or not you're going to use it, I think depends on whether you want it. I tend not to use Loctite on any of my camera rigs because I know that all this level of equipment, I'm going to use it on this setup. I'm then going to pull it apart and go out to the next thing. So I don't want more typically. Now that's me. Others will have a different thing. And in fact, we're going to start with Courtney and then go to Josh and Kyle before we finish up the show.
Yeah, I wouldn't use Loctite on screws for attaching camera because You just tighten them down really tight, because as soon as you get it tightened and Loctite on it and the Loctite dries, you got to change its angle, because you're going to say, we need to tilt up a little bit. Okay, well, then I got to take the screw out, put more Loctite on it. No, just don't put Loctite on anything that you're going to be changing the angle of frequently. You want to put Loctite on screws that are going to go in and you have to take them out every 2 years or something. If you have to unscrew them every 2 years or so, put Loctite on them. Otherwise, no Loctite.
Josh Kaufman.
Yeah, and as far as like re-rigging things, of course, we know the friction arms are kind of terrible and they always want to turn the wrong way. So you can use the grip method of having gravity help you out for that on the ends. But when you have a connector that has its own little turret to attach it at the end, like these do and these connectors, it means that it can tighten things up in the position that you want them. And you can get that as tight as you want and have it in that same position. So you can eliminate some of those little extras like Loctite.
Kyle?
I was just going to say avoid Craggle. Craggle kills dreams.
There you go. Well, we managed a full hour of this. Thank you all. We are so appreciative of everybody's time and expertise and the sharing of everything. We want to thank everybody that we normally thank, the producers, all of you who asked questions today. I hope you enjoyed this show. It was fun to talk about an unusual circumstance like this. But, this is more and more about the kind of stuff we're shooting is on smaller rigs. And I thought it was really important to talk through some of these things. So in case you didn't know about some of these available products, you could. So our producers did a fabulous job in the back end asking questions. As always, our appreciation to you. The panelists come through every time, and our incredible back end crew who are monitoring the computers, getting the signals out, and doing a whole bunch of work beyond that, setting up for future guests and vetting things, getting all the information you see on the screens down. It does take a village to do this, and we appreciate it. We'll be back tomorrow. Courtney, we're talking to Courtney tomorrow. So everybody who's been watching Courtney all these years, you're going to be able to come in and see his history and find out some stories like that fabulous one he told in the show today. We'll see you all tomorrow. Bye-bye.
I'll have to unlock my brain and get some of those old stories out.
You did pretty well today, dude. Looking forward to that.
Believe me, we were on that scene for weeks, and it appears for about 3 seconds of the movie.
You didn't follow the old W.C. Fields warning and never work with children or animals?
Oh, gosh. There were scenes we spent months on that were cut out. Oy.
Months, I say. I was trying to stick with the Lego theme. No Craggle.
No Craggle. What is Craggle?
Is it hobble together or cobble together? Do you hobble something together or cobble it together?
I've always heard cobble, like a cobbler from making shoes.
What'd you say, Courtney?
You put little nails in it. Cobble. No, I didn't know what Craggle was. I know what Fraggle is.
Fraggle
is see you tomorrow.